Have you ever wondered how a simple act of kindness can change your entire life? Imagine this. A young man struggling to keep his small car repair shop afloat stumbles upon a broken-down car on a lonely road. Instead of walking away, he chooses to help. No questions asked, no payment expected. What happens next will shock you, and it's a powerful reminder that good deeds don't go unnoticed. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, make sure to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories just like this one. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to a small town where our young mechanic Jake lived and worked. Jake was no stranger to hard work. Since he was a teenager, he had learned the value of sweat and effort. His father, a simple man who had passed away a few years earlier, had left him with the family garage, a tiny workshop tucked away on a quiet street. It wasn't much, but it was Jake's world. Every morning, Jake would open the garage doors just as the sun peeked over the horizon, and every night he'd close them long after the streetlights flickered on. Money was always tight, and there were many days when Jake wondered if he'd be able to keep the business running. Parts were expensive, customers were few, and the bills kept piling up, yet Jake never complained. His dream wasn't just to fix cars, but to build a better life for himself and his younger sister who was still in school. He wanted to give her opportunities he never had, a chance to study and succeed. One crisp autumn morning, Jake was working on a rusty old sedan that had seen better days. As he wiped his greasy hands on his overalls, a sudden sound caught his attention. It was a faint noise, a soft thud coming from the road just outside his garage. Curious, he stepped outside to see a woman standing next to a small hatchback car, her face a mixture of frustration and worry. The car's engine was silent, and smoke was curling faintly from under the hood. The woman was clearly upset. She looked like she had been trying to fix the problem herself, but had finally given up. Jake felt a pang of sympathy. He knew what it was like to feel helpless. "Hey," Jake called out gently. "Need some help?" She looked up, relief flooding her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know much about cars and I'm stuck." Jake smiled warmly. "No problem. Let me take a look." She introduced herself as Emily, a name that sounded familiar but Jake couldn't quite place at the time. She explained she was on her way to a job interview across town when the car broke down unexpectedly. Without hesitation, Jake grabbed his toolbox and popped open the car's hood. The smell of burnt oil and old rubber filled the air. As he examined the engine, he realized it was a minor issue. A broken hose that could be fixed quickly with the right part. But that part was expensive, and Jake knew Emily probably couldn't afford a big repair bill. "Look," Jake said kindly, "I can fix this for you today, but I won't charge you. Just promise me you'll pay it forward when you get the chance." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you sure? I don't want to take advantage." Jake shrugged. "Sometimes you just have to help each other out. Life's tough enough." She smiled, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief shining through. "Thank you. I won't forget this." As Jake worked, he told her stories of his small-town life, the struggles of running a garage, and his dreams for the future. Emily listened intently, her smile never fading. There was something honest and genuine about Jake, something rare. When the repair was done, Emily insisted on paying something, but Jake refused every offer. Instead, he handed her a business card and told her to come back if she ever needed anything. She left with a hopeful heart and a promise to return. Days passed, and life went on as usual for Jake. But then, Emily started coming by the garage more often. Sometimes she brought lunch, sometimes she stopped just to chat. Slowly, a friendship blossomed between the struggling mechanic and the mysterious woman with a warm smile. What Jake didn't know was that Emily's life was very different from his own. Behind her calm and humble demeanor was a story of wealth and influence. She owned several properties around the town and was part of a family that many admired but few really knew. Their conversations grew deeper, and Jake found himself opening up about his fears and hopes like never before. Emily encouraged him to keep chasing his dreams, assuring him that good things come to those who never give up. But life had more surprises in store. Just when Jake thought things were settling, an unexpected crisis hit. A crisis that would test their friendship and set the stage for a life-changing revelation. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends who love inspiring stories, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales. Your support means the world. Back to Jake's story. One evening, as Jake was closing the garage, he received a call. It was his sister. She had fallen ill and needed urgent care. Panic washed over Jake as he rushed her to the hospital. The medical bills piled up quickly, and Jake found himself in a situation worse than before. Emily heard about his troubles and quietly started helping behind the scenes. She paid some bills, arranged for loans, and even helped Jake get the parts he needed to keep the garage open. Jake was overwhelmed, but still didn't fully understand who Emily really was. Their bond grew stronger, built on trust and kindness. Emily never asked for anything in return. She just wanted to see Jake succeed. This is where the story takes a turn. The moment when the generosity Jake showed in fixing a broken car for free returned to him tenfold in ways he could never have imagined. When we left off, Jake was overwhelmed with the kindness Emily had shown after his sister's illness put him in a tough spot. But the true depth of their connection and the surprising path their lives would take was still unfolding. This next chapter reveals how a simple gesture can spiral into something much greater, and how fate sometimes works in mysterious ways. Life in the small town moved slowly, but for Jake, every day was a race against time. The bills from the hospital, the costs of keeping the garage running, and the weight of responsibility for his sister's well-being bore down on him like a heavy storm cloud. Yet amidst this struggle, the visits from Emily became a steady light. She would show up unannounced, bringing groceries or helping with the paperwork. Jake was amazed at her generosity, but even more surprised by her humility. She never made him feel indebted or uncomfortable. There was no sense of superiority, just genuine friendship and support. One afternoon, as Jake was working on an old pickup truck, Emily stopped by with an idea. "Jake," she said thoughtfully, "have you ever considered expanding your business? You're talented, and there are so many people around here who need someone like you." Jake shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "I wish I could, but I don't have the capital. Every penny goes toward keeping this place open." Emily smiled softly. "Maybe I can help. Let's talk." That simple offer set off a chain of events neither of them could have predicted. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked quietly behind the scenes. She connected Jake with a local bank that offered small business loans with reasonable terms. She even introduced him to a mentor, a retired mechanic who had once run a successful chain of garages. Jake felt like he was dreaming. This was the kind of help he'd never dared to ask for, and yet it was given freely. But the question lingered. Why was Emily doing all this? What did she expect in return? One evening, as they sat on a bench outside the garage watching the sunset, Jake finally asked, "Emily, I have to know. Why are you helping me so much? We barely knew each other." Emily looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Because someone once helped me when I was in need, and because I believe that kindness should never be wasted." Jake nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "That's really something." Their friendship deepened. Jake found himself confiding in Emily more than anyone else. He told her about his dreams of buying a bigger shop, hiring a few employees, and providing a better life for his sister. Emily listened with a warmth that made Jake feel like anything was possible. But life, as always, has its twists. One chilly autumn evening, as Jake was closing the garage, Emily arrived looking troubled. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you," she said hesitantly. Jake looked up, concern knitting his brow. "What is it?" Emily took a deep breath. "My family owns several properties around town. One of them, a house, has been sitting empty for years. It needs someone responsible to take care of it. I've been thinking, maybe it could be yours." Jake blinked in surprise. Yours? But why me? Because I trust you, she said simply. And I want to help you build something stable. You've been struggling, and I think this house could be a fresh start. Jake was speechless. The idea of owning a house, of having a real home to call his own, had always seemed like a distant dream. Now, here was Emily, offering him that very chance. But I don't know if I'm ready, Jake admitted. I don't want to take charity. Emily smiled gently. This isn't charity. It's an investment in you, and besides, you fixed my car for free that day. I just want to repay your kindness in a way that makes sense. The weeks that followed were filled with paperwork, renovations, and late nights. Jake worked tirelessly to fix up the house, pouring his heart into every corner. Emily helped, arranging contractors and buying materials, but always letting Jake take the lead. As the house slowly transformed, so did Jake's outlook. For the first time in years, hope blossomed where despair had once taken root. But not everyone in town was happy about Jake's newfound fortune. Rumors started spreading, whispers, about how a struggling mechanic could suddenly afford a house owned by a wealthy family. Some people doubted him, some envied him, and a few even tried to sabotage his efforts. Jake faced these challenges with quiet determination. He knew the truth of his journey, the hard work and kindness that had brought him here. He refused to let negativity pull him down. Meanwhile, Emily remained his steadfast supporter, reminding him that success wasn't just about money, but about character and perseverance. One day, as Jake was finishing the last coat of paint on the porch, Emily showed up with an envelope. "Open this when you're ready," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. Later that night, alone in the quiet of the house, Jake tore open the envelope. Inside was a deed, the official ownership document of the house, and beneath his name, in elegant script, was a note from Emily. To Jake, whose kindness fixed my car and whose heart deserved this home. This is just the beginning. Emily? Jake sat back, overwhelmed by the realization. The stranger he had helped that day had become his greatest blessing. But the story doesn't end here. This gift was just the first step on a path that would lead Jake to opportunities he never dreamed possible. A path that would test his values, challenge his limits, and ultimately change his life forever. After the overwhelming moment when Jake received the deed to the house, his life took a new turn, one filled with fresh challenges, surprising opportunities, and the deepening of a bond that neither he nor Emily had anticipated. That small act of kindness, fixing a broken-down car for free, had set in motion a series of events that would transform everything. Jake sat on the freshly painted porch, the evening breeze carrying the faint scent of pine and blooming flowers from the nearby park. The house felt warm, alive, like it was finally his own. He ran his hand over the deed, the paper smooth but heavy with meaning. But owning a house was far from easy. The responsibilities were immediate and daunting. The house was older than it looked, with hidden problems that showed up one after another. A leaking roof that dripped steadily during a sudden rainstorm, a faulty heating system that left the rooms freezing during chilly nights, plumbing that groaned and creaked as though the pipes themselves were warning of age and neglect. Yet Jake faced these challenges head-on, the way he always did, with grit, determination, and a refusal to be beaten down. He wasn't alone in this. Emily was there, more often than not, encouraging him, bringing supplies, or just sitting beside him when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm. Their relationship had grown from simple kindness to a deep friendship, built on trust and shared dreams. Jake found himself thinking about the day they first met, that moment when a stranger's kindness had turned his world upside down. Back then, life felt like an endless uphill battle. Now, he had something real. A home. A future. Still, life wasn't ready to hand him victory on a silver platter. The financial strain was real. Between hospital bills for his sister's ongoing care and the mounting costs of the house repairs, Jake was stretched thin. His garage, which had been his sole source of income, demanded more attention than ever. The work was exhausting, but he refused to give up. One afternoon, as Jake worked under the hood of a car, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Got something for you. Meet me at the cafe." Curious, Jake wiped his hands on a rag and headed out. At the cafe, Emily waited, holding an envelope. She smiled warmly. "This might help," she said, handing it to him. Inside was a letter of recommendation from a local business association. Emily had spoken on his behalf, vouching for his skills and character. The letter opened doors Jake never knew existed. It wasn't long before Jake received a call from a well-known local car dealership. They wanted him to consult on their maintenance team, part-time, flexible hours, and a steady paycheck. For Jake, this was a breakthrough. It meant he could stabilize his income, afford the house repairs, and maybe even hire an assistant for the garage. The news lifted his spirits, but it also brought a new kind of pressure. Balancing the new job with his garage and sister's needs stretched him to the limit. Some days, exhaustion settled deep into his bones. Yet through it all, Emily's presence was a constant comfort. They would share meals, laugh over small jokes, and talk late into the night about their hopes and fears. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Emily looked over at Jake. "You've come so far," she said softly. "I'm proud of you." Jake smiled, feeling the weight of those words more than she could know. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Their friendship was blossoming into something more profound, something that neither dared to name aloud, but both felt growing stronger. Meanwhile, the house itself was becoming a symbol of new beginnings. As Jake fixed the creaky stairs, repainted the walls, and tended to the garden, he found peace in the simple acts of creation. The house was no longer just a building. It was a sanctuary. Yet, even as the days grew brighter, shadows loomed. Not everyone was supportive. Some neighbors whispered behind his back, doubting his intentions or questioning how he could afford such a place. There were moments when Jake overheard cruel comments or felt the sting of suspicion, but he learned to ignore the negativity, focusing instead on the people who mattered. One afternoon, a letter arrived, marked with an official seal. Jake's heart pounded as he opened it. It was a notice of inspection. The city wanted to evaluate the house for safety and compliance. The news threw Jake into a whirlwind of activity. He needed to get everything up to code or risk losing the house. With Emily's help, he organized repairs, enlisted local contractors, and worked tirelessly to ensure every detail was perfect. During this time, Jake discovered hidden strengths within himself. The challenges, though tough, were teaching him resilience and patience. He began to see his struggles not as burdens, but as stepping stones. In the midst of the chaos, a surprise awaited him. One evening, as Jake returned home, late from the garage, Emily was waiting outside, holding a small box. "I found this at the market," she said, handing it to him. Inside was a vintage key, ornate and beautiful. "It's for the house," she explained. "I thought it might bring you luck." Jake laughed, feeling a warmth spread through him. The key was more than just a tool. It was a symbol of their shared journey. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the house passed inspection. The neighbors' doubts began to fade as they saw Jake's dedication and care. His garage flourished, his sister's health improved, and his bond with Emily deepened. Yet, even as life seemed to settle, Jake knew the road ahead would still have twists and turns. What would happen when the past caught up with him? What secrets might Emily be keeping? And what did the future hold for two people brought together by a chance encounter and a shared belief in kindness? These questions hung in the air like a promise, one that would unravel in the next chapters of Jake's remarkable story. After the whirlwind of events that had brought Jake and Emily closer than ever, life settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and fragile. The house that once seemed like a distant dream was now Jake's home. The garage thrived more than ever, and Emily's steady presence became a light that cut through the darkest days. But as Jake would soon discover, the past has a way of catching up with you, no matter how fast you run or how far you've come. The evening was quiet. a calm that Jake hadn't felt in a long time. He sat in his favorite chair, the soft glow of a table lamp illuminating the walls of his newly fixed living room. The house had undergone so many changes, from the creaky floors to the fresh coat of paint, from the untamed garden to the well-stocked kitchen. Every detail told a story of hard work and hope. Emily was in the kitchen, humming softly as she washed the dishes. Their conversations had grown deeper lately, no longer just about fixing things or sharing small moments, but about dreams, fears, and the uncertain future. Suddenly the phone rang, shattering the peaceful silence. Jake's heart skipped. He wasn't expecting any calls. He grabbed the receiver, his voice steady but cautious. "Hello?" A voice on the other end was unfamiliar but serious. "Mr. Thompson, this is Detective Harris from the County Sheriff's Office. I need to ask you some questions about your recent activities." Jake's breath caught. The detective continued, "We have reason to believe you may have information related to an ongoing investigation. I'd like to meet and discuss this in person." The line went dead before Jake could respond. His mind raced. What investigation? What could they possibly want from him? He paced the room, the shadows stretching long across the floor. For a moment, panic threatened to overtake him, but he forced himself to breathe deeply, to think clearly. He dialed Emily's number immediately. "Jake, everything okay?" Emily answered, her voice filled with concern. He told her about the call, his voice low but urgent. Emily listened quietly, then said, "We'll figure this out together." That night, sleep was elusive. Jake's mind replayed every event, every encounter. Had fixing that car, helping Emily, or something from his past put him in the sheriff's crosshairs? He didn't know. But one thing was clear. The past was no longer behind him. The next morning, Jake met with Detective Harris at the sheriff's office. The detective was professional but firm, his eyes sharp and searching. "We've had reports about some suspicious activity near the industrial park," Harris explained. "Some believe a vehicle you recently repaired may have been involved." Jake shook his head. "I fix a lot of cars. I don't know anything about suspicious activity." Harris studied him for a moment, then said, "We just want to rule out any connection. If you hear anything or remember anything unusual, contact us." Jake left the office feeling more confused than reassured. Was he being watched? Was someone trying to frame him? That afternoon, back at the garage, Jake threw himself into work. The familiar smell of oil and metal soothed his nerves, but the weight of the sheriff's visit hung heavy over him. Emily stopped by with lunch, her smile bright despite the tension. "You're stronger than this," she said firmly. "We'll get through it." Jake nodded, grateful, but uncertain. Days passed, and Jake's world shifted again. The garage's phone rang, a call from a prestigious auto shop downtown. They wanted to offer him a full-time job with benefits, a chance to expand his skills and income. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for, yet it came with a dilemma. Taking the job meant leaving the garage behind, leaving behind the place. That had been his refuge and source of pride. Emily encouraged him to consider the offer seriously. "You deserve this, Jake. You've earned it." But leaving the garage meant leaving a part of himself. Meanwhile, strange things began happening around the house. Jake noticed footprints in the garden at night. The door, which he always locked, sometimes seemed ajar in the morning. A feeling of unease crept in. One evening, as Jake was closing up the garage, he spotted a shadow moving near the fence. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Emily suggested installing security cameras. "We have to protect what's ours." Jake agreed. The tension mounted. Then came a call that shattered the fragile peace. A letter from the bank. His sister's medical bills were overdue, and the mortgage payments were falling behind. Jake felt the crushing weight of responsibility pressed down on him like never before. Desperation pushed him to consider selling the house, but Emily would hear none of it. "This house is your future," she said firmly. "We'll find a way." Together, they began searching for solutions. Grants, loans, community programs. They connected with neighbors, some of whom were more helpful than Jake expected. One neighbor, Mr. Caldwell, an elderly man with kind eyes, offered to help with small repairs. "I've been here a long time," he said. "I believe in helping those who work hard." Jake felt a spark of hope, yet the mystery of the shadowy figure remained unsolved. One night, Jake stayed up late, watching the security footage. At exactly 2 a.m., a figure appeared near the fence, tall, cloaked in a dark hoodie, moving with purpose. Jake's heart pounded. The figure approached the front door, then stopped, glancing around. Suddenly, the security alarm blared. Startled, the figure fled. Jake called the police immediately. The officers arrived quickly, but the intruder was gone. The incident shook Jake, but it also steeled his resolve. He realized that his life, his hard-earned peace, was worth fighting for. Emily stayed by his side, offering strength and comfort. In the coming days, Jake dug deeper into the mystery. He wondered if the strange events were connected to the sheriff's investigation, or if someone was simply trying to scare him away. The truth, Jake would soon discover, was far more complicated. One afternoon, as he sorted through old papers in the house, he found a hidden envelope tucked in a drawer. Inside was a letter addressed to him, written in a familiar handwriting. It was from his late grandfather, a man Jake barely remembered, but who had left a legacy that would change everything. The letter spoke of family secrets, hidden fortunes, and a warning to be cautious. Jake's mind reeled. His simple life was now entangled with a history he never knew. With Emily's encouragement, Jake decided to uncover the truth. Together, they began piecing together the past, old photographs, faded documents, and whispered stories from neighbors. The journey led them to unexpected places, dusty archives, forgotten towns, and conversations with people who knew his grandfather. Through it all, Jake learned about resilience, sacrifice, and the power of family. But as they uncovered the past, the dangers grew closer. Someone didn't want Jake to know the truth. Threats appeared, anonymous notes, vandalized property, and whispered warnings. Jake and Emily faced these challenges with courage, knowing their bond was their greatest strength. The house, once just a place to live, became a symbol of their fight, a beacon of hope and home. As Part 4 closes, Jake stands at a crossroads. The tension in Jake's life was palpable now. Every day seemed to bring a new challenge, a fresh puzzle piece of his past that demanded attention. But nothing prepared him for the revelation that was about to unfold, one that would shake the very foundation of his trust, his hopes, and the future he had fought so hard to build. After days of sifting through the old documents, photographs, and letters his grandfather had left behind, Jake and Emily finally unearthed something extraordinary, a series of legal papers that spoke of a hidden will, a property deed, and a secret business venture his grandfather had quietly built over the years. This was the legacy Jake never knew. He had a legacy tangled with promise, responsibility, and danger. It began with a faded, handwritten note tucked inside the leather-bound journal of his grandfather. The note was brief, but powerful. "Jake, if you're reading this, know that the road ahead will not be easy. The house you live in is more than it seems. It holds the key to our family's future. Protect it, trust wisely, and never forget where you come from." The words echoed in Jake's mind. He felt the weight of his grandfather's wisdom, but also the burden of his warnings. Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes steady with determination. "We'll figure this out together, Jake. You're not alone." But as they began to uncover the extent of the property, which included more than just the house, strange things escalated. Mysterious phone calls, shadowy figures lurking near the garage, and cryptic notes slipped under the door hinted that someone was watching, waiting for the right moment to act. One evening, Jake returned home from the garage to find the front door wide open. The security cameras had been disabled, and the house was ransacked, drawers pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. But what struck Jake most was the absence of his grandfather's journal. "Why would someone take that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Jake's heart sank. Whoever had broken in knew exactly what they were after. The police were called, but with little evidence, their hands were tied. Jake and Emily decided to take matters into their own hands. They spent the next few nights poring over the clues they had, trying to piece together who might want to steal the journal and what they hoped to gain. In the midst of this turmoil, a surprise visit brought a new ally into their lives, a family lawyer named Ms. Daniels, who had worked with Jake's grandfather. She arrived at the house with files, photographs, and stories that shed light on the hidden business and its implications. Ms. Daniels explained that Jake's grandfather had been involved in a modest real estate investment company, one that had quietly grown in value over the years. The house Jake lived in was part of a larger estate, which could secure financial stability for Jake and Emily, but only if they could prove rightful ownership. "There are legal hurdles," Ms. Daniels warned, "and some people might try to stop you from claiming what's yours." The tension in Jake's life escalated from uncertainty to a battle for survival. He had to navigate through the complexities of law, old family disputes, and threats from unknown adversaries. Emily remained his rock, supporting him through late-night research, court visits, and moments of despair. One particularly challenging day came when Jake received an anonymous message: "Leave the property or face the consequences." Fear gripped him, but it also ignited a fierce resolve. He was not going to be driven away from the home his grandfather had left, nor from the future he dreamed of building with Emily. With Ms. Daniels' guidance, Jake prepared to face the legal battle ahead. They gathered witnesses, collected old deeds, and sought testimonies that would validate his claim. Meanwhile, Jake's work at the garage continued to thrive, offering a semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. His reputation as a skilled mechanic spread, and customers came from all over the town, some offering help, others watching warily. Then came a breakthrough. A distant relative of Jake's grandfather, who had been estranged from the family for decades, reached out. This relative possessed critical documents that could settle the property dispute once and for all. Jake met him with cautious optimism. Their meeting was tense but productive, and soon Jake had in his hands the final piece of the puzzle: a signed will that clearly named him as the rightful heir. The victory, however, was short-lived. On the eve of the court hearing, Jake's garage was set on fire. Flames engulfed the building, and firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the blaze. The destruction was nearly total, wiping out years of hard work, memories, and tools. Jake and Emily stood outside, watching helplessly as their livelihood turned to ash. The devastation was more than material. It was a message, a warning to back down. But Jake's spirit was unbroken. With renewed determination, he vowed to rebuild. Not just the garage, but his life. The court day arrived, filled with tension and anticipation. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers came to show support. The judge listened carefully as Ms. Daniels presented the evidence. The will, the deeds, the testimonies, all pointed decisively to Jake. The verdict was clear. Jake was the rightful owner of the property. Relief washed over him like a tidal wave. But the victory was bittersweet. The threats didn't stop, and Jake knew the road ahead was still filled with challenges. Yet, amidst the trials, he found hope in unexpected places: the kindness of neighbors who helped him clean up after the fire, the unwavering support of Emily, and the strength he discovered within himself. The house was more than a building. It was a symbol of resilience, family, and the power of never giving up. As Part 5 closes, Jake looks ahead, ready to rebuild and protect the legacy entrusted to him. The story is far from over. If you're inspired by Jake's journey, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about courage, kindness, and unexpected twists. After the court ruling, Jake felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, but at the same time the fight had taken its toll on him. The garage fire, the threats, the long nights of worry, all these events left scars deeper than the ones visible on his hands and arms. Still, with Emily by his side and the property legally his, he was ready to start rebuilding. Not just his business, but his life as well. The first step was clearing the debris. The neighbors who had watched the whole drama unfold showed up in numbers Jake never expected. It was humbling to see familiar faces he had barely spoken to arrive with tools, gloves, and buckets of water, offering their help without asking for anything in return. Emily, always the heart of the operation, organized the volunteers and made sure everyone had food and water. The atmosphere was heavy, yet hopeful. Together, they cleared the burnt remains, salvaging what they could and making plans to rebuild. With the property secured, Jake was also determined to honor his grandfather's legacy properly. The old house was more than just a home. It was a treasure trove of family history. The journals, the letters, the photographs, all carefully preserved by Emily, offered a glimpse into a past filled with love, struggle, and perseverance. One evening, while going through a box of old papers, Jake found a letter addressed specifically to him from his grandfather. The handwriting was shaky, the ink faded, but the message was clear. Jake, if you have found this letter, it means you have faced many trials and have stayed strong. Remember, family is the most valuable thing. No matter what happens, protect each other and never forget who you are. Those words struck a chord deep within Jake. The battles he had faced were part of something bigger. His family's story of endurance and love. It reminded him why he had fought so hard, why he needed to keep going. Meanwhile, rebuilding the garage became a community effort. The local hardware store owner offered supplies at a discount, some contractors volunteered their time, and a few longtime customers promised to spread the word about Jake's business to help get it back on its feet. The process was slow but steady. Every nail hammered and every beam placed was a step toward healing. But just as things seemed to be looking up, Jake received a surprising phone call. It was from the woman whose car he had fixed months ago, the very reason this entire story began. Her voice was soft but firm, filled with gratitude and something more. She wanted to meet. When they finally sat down in a quiet cafe, the connection between them was undeniable. She explained that she had been watching Jake's journey from afar, moved by his resilience and kindness. She wanted to help in any way she could, not just as a former customer, but as someone who believed in paying forward the kindness he had shown her. Together, they came up with plans to create a scholarship fund in Jake's grandfather's name to help young people in the community chase their dreams, just like Jake had. The idea rekindled a spark in Jake's heart. He realized that his struggle wasn't just about property or business. It was about legacy, community, and the impact one person's kindness could have on many lives. Months passed, and the new garage stood proudly, a symbol of new beginnings. Jake's business flourished, and so did his relationship with Emily and their growing circle of friends. The threats had ceased, the past was finally laid to rest, and the future looked brighter than ever. One evening, Jake stood on the porch of his grandfather's house, the warm glow of the sunset casting golden light over the neighborhood. Emily joined him, their hands entwined. "We did it," she said softly. "We did," Jake replied, feeling a deep sense of peace. His name was on the deed, yes, but more importantly, his heart was in the right place. He had learned that kindness, courage, and community were the true keys to any legacy. And with that, Jake knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one full of hope, generosity, and endless possibilities. Thank you so much for staying with this story. If Jake's journey inspired you, please remember to like this video, share it with those who need a little hope, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories that remind us all what it means to be human. Until next time, keep believing, keep helping, and keep dreaming.